Okay, y'all. I guess I'm gonna give y'all a video, and this is just on WWE. Like overall, it's the end of 2025 coming to the end, and I mean, looking at how we gonna start off 2026. I'm just gonna say I think 2025 may have been. I don't know. Y'all think it was the worst year for WWE? I mean, record lows, and this is like the Netflix era and everything is, they take WrestleMania away from New Orleans. You're going back to back Vegas. John Cena retirement tour was ass. The only good thing that came out of 2025 was Naomi. And then she left halfway through the year. We didn't even get to see her title run. Just thinking about the highs and lows, you had the Naomi heel turn. You had Evolve. That was a good pay-per-view. You got Dominic Mysterio, AAA champion, Intercontinental champion, and that's about it. That's about it. Brock Lesnar came back. He got a pop, but what did Brock Lesnar actually do besides make a complete fool of himself, slipping on Raw before War Games, and then splitting his pants on SmackDown. The Beast incarnate became the Goofy incarnate. Roman Reigns gets booked like a jobber. Jey Uso, they don't know what to do with him. They hate LA Knight. And John Cena's gone. Gunther is actually Gunther. Gunther didn't move up in the ranks. He didn't move down in the ranks. I think Gunther stayed the same. Who had the biggest, rise is probably Braun Breaker, and he still didn't really do nothing. He really was pushed to that forefront. Cody stayed the same. The booking and the wrestling makes no sense. Seth Rollins, Cody, hell, even Jey Uso, they have and CM Punk, can't forget CM Punk. They have unlimited stamina. Unlimited. They will kick out of everything. They are at 99 plus stamina. The only people under Vince McMahon that had this like ultimate stamina was The Undertaker, The Rock, and Stone Cold. That unlimited stamina stuff was for those three guys, and if I want to throw a fourth in there, that fourth would be Kurt Angle. Those are really the only four people that like kicked out of everything. Now you could throw Hulk Hogan in there, but Hulk Hogan is Hulk Hogan. I don't want to throw Hulk Hogan in there because even he knew. It didn't take 400 rock bottoms and all of that to put Hulk away. You do the people's elbow, blah, 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 you're done. But, everyone has unlimited stuff. No one wants to put anyone else over. If you do, Crossroads off of the top turnbuckle, that's the 3. Do the 3. If you don't want to end the match off that, do the finisher and don't pin him right away. At least act knocked out and slowly pin him, and then he can kick out, because you can say, oh yeah, he didn't get that pin on time. It's like, no one has ring awareness. It is a shame, and I'm not even say a shame, but like, Dolph Ziggler is a good wrestler, but when Dolph Ziggler came back and I think he wrestled solo, man, it just showed you that even guys from that era have ring awareness and they know how to put on a good match. Nikki Bella is just a jobber, but seeing her and Trish Stratus kind of come back, brought kind of that, new millennium kind of, wrestling that we ain't seen in a while. It wasn't just, they took things a little slower. But man, besides Gunther is the only person that doesn't do all of this flippy dippy, hot spot stuff. And nothing wrong if you want to be, a high flyer, but man, like, you got to make that stuff count. Just watching Gunther, and I ain't gonna lie, Damian Priest too, like Gunther and Damian Priest, they still doing the power bombs. Gunther don't do the choke slam, but seeing Damian Priest do the choke slam, suplexes and stuff, like, they do some of those moves. Javon Evans and damn near every tag team, they doing some kind of high flying maneuver that barely connects. Everyone wants to jump out the ring. Everyone wants to do a frog splash. Logan Paul got the best frog splash. He makes it his splash. Tiffany, Jacob Fatu, Io Sky, they do the moonsault. Even Charlotte Flair does this moonsault. But, it looks good. They could hit it. They don't botch it, so I don't mind it. But, when you doing all of these extra flips just to land a kick, it's kind of not worth it. That needs to be reserved for, like, just Javon Evans. The Creed brothers, they do some aerial maneuvers, but they do it big time, like on a big scale, and for their weight class, it's impressive, so they could get away with it. Man, it's just like when I saw Montez Ford, he was struggling to like make a tag, and then all of a sudden he got this burst of energy, rolled up, hit a flip, and tagged in his partner, and that made no sense. Like, you was just struggling to make the tag. Why not just roll over, make the tag? Why throw in this extra flip? Like, we don't need that. Like, everybody can't be flippy dippy. That's why I kind of like Stephanie Verkeer. Like, she not with all that flippy dippy stuff, but she does have, off the top rope signature move, which is fine. But I think that's the problem with wrestling. Like, that's why I cannot really watch AEW. Everyone is Ricochet. Like, everyone wants to be Ricochet. And no one wants to be Jeff Hardy. Like, Jeff Hardy is probably the inspiration, and like Rey Mysterio and them, but Rey Mysterio does luchador stuff. Like, that's what he's supposed to do. And man, Jeff Hardy did a lot of dives and stuff, but 9 times out of 10 he connected them. He connected the dives, and when he made the dives, it made sense. You know, everyone wants to be Jack Evans. Everyone wants to be Evan Bourne. And when those guys were doing it, it was fine. There was only like 3 guys doing it. You know, Shannon Moore, you know, Brian Kendrick. You mean, those guys made that stuff count. Ultimo Dragon made that stuff count. You know, no one wants to be a Tajiri. You know, no one wants to be a Tajiri, bro. Tajiri was a good-ass wrestler. You know, Tajiri needs to be in the Hall of Fame. The Tarantula, you know, he did the Green Mist. Man, come on, bro. WWE sucks right now. And the sad part, this is the roster with like the most talent. If Vince McMahon was in WWE, or not, let's not even say Vince, you know, let's get Vince out the picture. Let's say Paul Heyman was over WWE creative. Like, everyone would be over. And I'm not going to say everyone, but you would have an elite top 50%. Matches would make sense. Like, everything would make sense. I mean, the story... Like, if you go back and look at the storylines of ECW, man, they had some really good storylines. They just didn't have good production to, you know, bring those storylines to life. You know, you had people stealing girlfriends, you know, people breaking into people's homes, you know, all kind of stuff. You know, I can't wait for Paul Heyman to at least try to take over. Triple H gotta go, man. Triple H is the... I don't really want to say this, but, man, Triple H is the cancer for WWE right now. You know, I didn't want to say that. I really did not want to say that. But, really, like, Triple H is the cancer. Everyone else in creative, too. Like, when you look at that WWE, what is it, Unseen or something? Everyone in that creative sucks. Their ideas suck. You know, they going off of this 93 type booking and gimmick stuff. You know, everything is extra, you know, PG. You know, it's like they're stuck in this PG era. And you can actually have PG era stuff and be good. Disney does that a lot. You can't tell me Shrek 1, 2, and 3 weren't good. And that was PG. You know, you just got to have a good story. That's really all WWE is missing. You don't need the super hardcore stuff. That's not going to get you over. You cannot do mega hardcore stuff and not have a good story behind it. The whole point of doing something, you know, super hardcore, Hell in a Cell, we have to get to that point. You don't do Hell in a Cell as the first match. Like, y'all need to have a feud for like 3 to 4 months, building it up. And, you know, finally we get to this Hell in a Cell. That's the only thing I like about CM Punk and Drew McIntyre. You know, they had their like 3-4 match feud. They had some stuff building up to it, but it still wasn't. It could. Their story still sucked. You know, it still sucked, man. But that, I'm gonna say, that's my rant. I don't even want to talk about this anymore. You know, I really, really want y'all to go check out Wrestling New World Order video about Stephanie McMahon. It's like a 2 to 3 part series. Y'all really need to go watch that, because it really breaks down what I've been telling y'all. I think Triple H is trying to ruin wrestling, and his video breaks down really why that is. And it brings really more insight to what's going on behind the scenes. You know, that would take me forever to lay out, and I ain't trying to do that in this video. You know, if y'all want that 20-30 minute video, I might make that later on. I don't want to edit a 20 to 30 minute video, but you know, put in the comment section, you know, like, comment, subscribe, and then put in the comment section, rate WWE 2025. You know, on a scale of 1 to 10, y'all just put a number in the comment section. Like, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best, you know, where do y'all rate WWE 2025? You know, if I had to give it a rating, I'm going to say 2025 was a 5. It was mid. It was mid. You know, some people might give it a 3. You know, some people might give it a 7 just because it was John Cena's last year. But I'm going to give it a smooth 5. A smooth 5. That is a high 5. Like, there will not be anything more than that 5. I'm barely justifying giving 2025 WWE a 5. You know, I can't just say it was ultimate dog poo. It was dog poo for a lot of years, but we had some highlights that I felt made it a little more deserving. But I'm going to give that a smooth 5. That's it. 2025 was mid. Peace.